Without further ado, I'd like to bring up Dr. Ritz and Amanda.
Just a little bit of housekeeping too, and thank you all for coming. Thank Arrow Heights Baptist Church, Pastor Green, for allowing us to have this forum here tonight. This is not a debate, it's basically a discussion, and you'll see in a little bit that even strong conservatives disagree, and we hope that we'll inform you enough, and then if there's some questions, we can certainly try to go into that. I am Mike Ritz, I'm a deacon here at Arrow Heights, and we did this a couple of years ago for the church and opened it up to the public because the state questions are probably, along with the judges, the two hardest areas for people to really understand. The Attorney General takes the language that the legislature votes on, and after we've studied it, and then they put it into a ballot question for a constitutional amendment. And so what we'll try to do is clarify that tonight, and we're going to start off. Amanda and I'll start off, and then we'll go back and forth a little bit with some thoughts about that, and particularly the ones that we do disagree on. There are 6 ballot questions, and you all should have those in front of you. The first state question is 758, and this deals with ad valorem taxes. Basically, the ad valorem taxes have, for the retired people, the reason that I voted for this and am in supportive of this is it lowers the rate that the assessors can assess from 5% maximum down to 3%. And it seemed that the retired people were getting hit pretty hard because the assessor could do 5% every year if he wanted to. And that's where you could say in 3 years it could be 15% on the value of your home. Now, this will only be for people that have homesteads and for agricultural property. And as we see agricultural property increasing in areas, especially urban areas, where it's growing out into some agricultural, it does not mean that it's commercial. It will not involve commercial property. It will strictly be homesteaded and agricultural. The reason for the bill, and it was originally brought up by Representative Dank, who is kind of our senior advisor out of Oklahoma City. He looks after a lot of senior issues, the elderly, and some of the things that are impacting not only people in his district in Oklahoma City area, but all over the state. The reason that this was brought up, and I voted, actually co-sponsored the bill, is that it will help us with the impact of the assessors increasing the value. And I don't want to mislead you. This is not a cross-the-board tax decrease, because when we vote on ad valorem taxes, it all depends on the bond indebtedness in your particular district. So there could potentially be bond indebtedness of millages that go along. Now, some of the people that are in opposition to this bill feel like that it'll spread other taxes to have to go up. I respectfully disagree. We've got to stop this value of your properties sometime, somewhere, and then it's up to the voters, not a county assessor, to decide what your tax will be for your ad valorem taxes. And I think that's kind of the nuts and bolts of this. It will limit the property taxes. As your home value does increase from inflation, it'll keep it down to 3%. But again, we don't want to mislead you that your millages could go up if you vote for more property millages and bond issues in your community. So that's the main reason that I am in favor of 758. I'll let Amanda talk about it and give her point of view, and then we'll move on unless there's questions.
All right, thank you very much for allowing me to speak tonight, and for Dr. Ritz being gracious enough to allow that there are differing opinions on the state questions. We agree on a lot of them, but not all. And this is one of the ones that we do not agree on because, as Dr. Ritz has pointed out, putting a cap on the value does nothing to do to control your millage rate, and it doesn't actually reduce the tax burden in your county. When we were discussing these and traveling around, I realized pretty quick on the tax questions, which are the bookend questions, the first one and the last one, it really depends on what county you live in. Where you live colors your worldview, what you think is actually going to happen. The people in the rural counties cannot relate to all the taxes that Tulsa County has. They don't have a sinking fund. They don't have school bonds. They don't have a city-county library. They may not even have a city-county health department. We're paying for all of those, and so we have high millage rates, and they don't. For instance, Beaver County has one that's relative, almost half what mine is. I live in the Union Public School District, so my ad valorem taxes are higher than those who are in Broken Arrow, and higher than Dewey Bartlett's, who lives in Tulsa County, but he also lives in Tulsa School District. By the way, he pays $18,000 in property tax in his house. If you're interested in how I know that, is you can go to the Oklahoma Assessor's Office, put in your name, and pull up your property, and you will see what the assessed value is of your house, the millage rate that you're paying, but you'll also see the itemized list of all the things that your property taxes are going to pay. Now, Tulsa County is a heavily taxed county. We're more developed. We have higher concentration of population. And that has an effect on what's going to happen with this. We opposed state question 758 because the tax burden has not been reduced. You've put a cap on the increase of the fair cash value. One of the handouts that we've had is the formula that's given out by the Tulsa County Assessor's Office. And in your hands, you should have a flyer that looks like this. This flyer is the formula that the County Assessor's Office uses to calculate the taxes. Now, you know from math that there you have two parts that can multiply. One, A times B equals C. In this case, C is fixed because that's the debt the county owes. You're going to put a cap on A, which happens to be value, or it could go down. B goes up and down as needed to get C, because C is a fixed value based on what our debt is. We have debt. Everybody in here who voted yes on the school bond issue is the one that was responsible for keeping your property taxes up, because it is a continuation of a bond that you have to pay off. So the formula is, as your value goes down or is capped, the millage rate goes up to get the tax. We learned a whole lot more about taxes by examining these state questions, so we were very grateful that they were there, even though it was a pain in the neck and a big headache to understand tax questions in ad valorem. We're opposed to it because it's not a tax cut, it's perceived as a tax cut, and it only applies to those people who have homestead exemption, which of the three properties I looked at, only one of them had homestead exemption, and that was me, our property, and it only applies to agricultural land. What that means is that everybody else who is not in those two categories are most likely to have an increase in their property tax. The confusion is, as Representative Ritz has said, is that people are perceiving this as a tax cut, and all it's doing is put a cap on your values, not a tax cap. And I'm going to read one thing real quick. This is from a publication by the Journal of Property Tax Assessment and Administration, and it says, this is a multi-page document, it says the bottom line is that capping values may increase individual tax predictability, but may have unintended tax shifting effects with respect to large numbers of properties, some of which may appear to be beneficiaries of the caps, while they actually pay higher taxes. So, this is something that I recommend everybody call your county assessor about. There's a lot of people in that office who will help you with the intended consequences. Some will benefit and some aren't.
Amanda, please speak to the issue of elderly citizens who have their property value capped.
You have a cap. I'll give you a scenario that Ken Hazel gave me when I was in his office. If you're disabled or you're elderly, there's a 0% cap on your property, which means the value doesn't go up at all. It's a zero cap. So you had a resident of Tulsa County who was blind, got his tax bill, and his property tax had gone up. he was under the impression he was going to get a 0% increase in his property taxes. So he went down to the county assessor's office, and the county assessor had to explain the cap was on the value, which is part A of the formula, but not on the millage rate. So your property tax does still go up. I asked down at the assessor's office, what's the solution here? You have to vote down every single bond issue. You have to get out of debt. So every time you vote yes on the school bond issue, you are guaranteeing that your property taxes are going to stay high. The other thing is that the excise board needs to stop rubber stamping the budgets that are given to them and challenge the taxing entities to cough up all the money that they're squirreling away instead of continuing to ask for new money every year and the excise board rubber stamping it. So our bottom line is, because it is a tax shift, not a tax reduction, that we are opposed to this question.
Can I answer that also? I'll just use the podium. The legislature passed, I believe, 6 years ago, and then they've changed it since then. But if you're 65 or older, your property taxes are frozen at the value when you retire, that value. But there's many people that retire. My father-in-law retired from the highway patrol at age 55. There's other people that retire, but he had to continue to pay. There's military retirees and others had to continue to pay whatever the county assessor assesses that property at. All this does, and again, I don't want to mislead you, this potentially can lower the assessment on your value of your home, which potentially can lower the taxes. We both agree that the bonds is what makes the millage go up, but it will be a direction and should be voted for at least one direction, and then we can close other loopholes of taxes. And I want to add that Tulsa County is the highest tax county in the state. We're the third highest property taxes in the nation. And in Tulsa County, Broken Arrow and Jenks, it kind of goes back and forth, are the two highest out of the state. So Tulsa County is the highest, Broken Arrow and Jenks are the two highest cities. We're the third highest in the nation. We felt like this would help retirees, doesn't have to be any age, which are already experiencing higher values, and to vote for this 758. Let's move on to the next one, which would be 759, right? Now, again, we respectfully can agree to disagree. We hope we can make it plain enough for you to understand. 759 is a joint resolution to direct the Secretary of State to prohibit certain preferential treatment of discrimination. Now, it's commonly referred to as affirmative action. And basically, affirmative action was a federal law that many of the states followed with, that there couldn't, in any type of a state contract, say they want to go out and build a road or a bridge or a building or whatever, they could not discriminate if you were of certain sex, race, whatever the color, ethnicity, or national origin. It does add into the Constitution the words affirmative action. But keep in mind, when our state was established at the beginning of the 1900s, there's a lot of words that were not in our Constitution. Abortion is not in our Constitution until we added that. So we have laws now that prohibit abortion. That was not in there. But you need to not be concerned about the word affirmative action. You need to realize, and this bill was authored by a black member of our House of Representatives, and he debated it heavily. He says we need to stop giving preferential treatment. We now caught up for race, sex, creed, color, ethnicity, or national origin, and basically level the playing field. If there is something that's already in place, such as they need a woman for that job or a man for that job, that's not under the auspices of this bill. So we are recommending, I voted for, and I am again a co-author of 759, that we pass this bill, and we'll be glad to turn it over to Amanda, and then we'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Ritz. All right, if you look at the handout from OKSAFE, we put the ballot language as it will appear on your ballot, and Rhonda printed out ballots for you, so that'll match. And I want to draw your attention to this is State Question 759. If you look at 759, there are 3 itemized points. And by the way, this deals with where it says public, put in the word government. So this is preferential treatment or discrimination provision deals with 3 areas of governmental action. These areas are employment, education, and contracting. So it's talking about government employment, government education, which would be also and contracting with government. So that's the category that it affects. If you look at items number 1, 2, and 3, as Dr. Ritz said, sometimes discrimination is allowed when it's required when gender is a modified qualification. There are some things that men or women are better suited to. The number 2 is existing court orders and consent decrees that require treatment consumers can be allowed. They have an existing circumstance or contract that will continue. But item number 3 is the problem for us at OKSAFE. It says affirmative action is allowed when needed to keep or obtain federal funds. Now, when you're talking about federal government employment, government education, and government contracting, you know that grants are often part of the picture. Federal funding comes with strings attached. We found that out when we started reading the grants, like the healthcare reform, for the early innovator grant, and other subsequent grants. At the back of those grants, which are contracts that 2 parties each agree to adhere to, by the way, it says that Party A, which would be the state, if you take these funds and you agree to abide by these hiring practices, the Civil Rights Act, etc. All right? So, because it is adding, we have a pretty simple objection to this. Because it added that compromise, and Mr. Connerly, very fine gentleman from California, who's spoken with knowledge on this, admitted in Ada when we were speaking together, or at the same event, is that that was a compromise to get that's compromise language. Our position is that shouldn't have been in there. In 2009, we passed a bill that's a resolution, passed both chambers, and that resolution was the 10th Amendment resolution saying that basically we have states' rights. And what the federal government is an agency of the states, and that we have the authority to do as we desire, etc. Now, a resolution is not law, but it is a statement of intent and political will. So, by adding in item number 3, we have reversed political will from 2009, and also said, put in there, to say we're going to have it if the feds want it, and by the way, all the money from the feds is tied to the permanent action.
Want to speak to that? Mr. Connolly, would you want to come up?
So we're opposed on principle.
If you want to come up, Mr. Connolly is visiting here and has been speaking about this particular item, State Question 759. And again, don't let the language affirmative action scare you. We're trying to level the playing field because I had a call the other day from a young lady who had been accepted to OU Medical School, and because she had very high qualifications, but because the medical school had a requirement, a federal law, that they had to accept so many minorities and ethnic backgrounds, Native Americans, feather Indians, as my mother called them, and not a dot Indian, which is Asian, but they had to accept so many. She got booted out, not booted out, she got rejected for the medical school admissions. And this will stop that. This will level the playing field. You cannot discriminate. Mr. Connolly is visiting us, and I asked him to come tonight, and he can speak to that also about that if you want to, sir.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ritz. It's a pleasure to be with you folks. I think this is an idea whose time has come. If our nation stands for anything at all, it should stand for equal rights for everybody. Civil rights are not just for black people, they're for everybody. And too many cities, counties, states, public universities have made affirmative action a cure that's sometimes worse than a disease. Affirmative action was intended when John F. Kennedy fashioned it to be a policy of non-discrimination. But over the years, it has become discrimination, sometimes against Asians, sometimes against whites. And in some cases, it's ironically against black people. I think that affirmative action marginalizes people. It presumes that if you're black or if you're a woman, that you can't compete. The government has to give you something. So I think that this is an idea whose time has come. If I were king, I would say, no, we don't want to put ourselves at the mercy of the federal government. But I think if you were to go to the average citizen and say that this state might lose $4 or $5 billion by having that clause in there about the federal government, this wouldn't pass. So let the legislature and the administration, the governor, fight with the federal government, the Obama administration, over whether highway dollars will be taken away or money from the Department of Education. That's an ideological battle that needs to be fought at another time and another place, not to put that into the Constitution. So that is the compromise that we have urged the states to take in every instance. This is passed in the state of California by 55 to 45. It's passed in the state of Michigan by 58 to 42, in Nebraska, in Arizona, and Washington state. This is an idea whose time has come. Don't be fearful of what the federal government might do. They have never yet taken away money or insisted, except for California, they have insisted that the state use preferences, and we don't have the backbone in California, I regret to say, to stand up to it. But I think that this state might have that backbone. But for God's sake, don't put it into the Constitution that you want to fight that battle, because you would lose the whole fight, in my view, because the voters, by an overwhelming majority, would not go along with this if they're going to sacrifice $3 to $4 billion of their own money. This is money that you've sent to Washington. And I think that most voters would want to get that, because not getting it would mean probably higher taxes.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions about 759? I support it. Amanda with OK Safe is against it. Mr. Connolly has done a good job of speaking to this across the country, and hopefully we've made it clear enough so you all can make an intelligent decision. Let's move on to, 762. I think we agree on that one.
We agree.
Outside of 765, the last one, this is the worst state question that we could have. And the reason for that, what 762 does, state question 762, is it will basically take the governor out of the parole process. And I'm very strong on crime, on fighting crime. I am the vice chairman of the Public Safety Committee for the House of Representatives Appropriations and Budget. You all know my background if you go to church here, working with law enforcement, having many law enforcement in our family. And we had, the state district attorneys are against this. And I'm against this. Amanda's against this, OK Safe. The governor needs to be part of the parole process. We do not need to allow some individuals that are overburdened trying to make a decision, and the governor will not be a stumbling block to this, and you need to oppose 762. Any questions about that? Amanda, if you want to speak to that, make it clear or whatever?
We agree with Dr. Ritz on this, or he agrees with us, I'm not sure what happened. But it does remove accountability from the Pardon and Parole Board. The idea behind it was to speed up the pardon and parole process for those who were not a certain level of offender, so to get it going. problem then, it sounds more like it's a problem of efficiency in the governor's office, rather than changing our constitution to remove an elected official from the accountability aspect. If you take the governor out, there is no elected official that you can hold responsible for good or bad decisions. And so we oppose this question.
Yes, sir.
Respectfully, I disagree with your position. I suppose you realize that Oklahoma is the only state in the union that has a governor involved with the parole process. And she turned down over 400 parolees. I know there's scoundrels in prisons, but if you visited prison, if you've been in the ministry, if you talk to these people, there's a lot of decent people who made a mistake and they need a chance. The Pardon and Parole Board voted 5-0 to pardon him. It goes to the governor, and she declines it. And then the next time they come up, they won't even vote for that individual because, hey, the governor's not going to approve it anyway. So there's a lot of issues here that you need to consider. We know we want to be tough on crime. I agree. But if you talk to some of these individuals, they deserve a second chance. And the governor doesn't have time to look at each packet. The Pardon and Parole Board, they interact with these people face to face. They ask them questions. They look at their demeanor and their attitude and their appearance. And they can tell better than the governor if they deserve a chance, a second chance. So I would vote for this amendment.
Any other comments? Yes, sir.
I kind of agree with what he's saying there. For this purpose, I have been to the Pardon and Parole Board with my son on many occasions, watched them go to sleep while the process was going on, and then give a no. The governor would just rubber stamp it, primarily because their job is related to a vote, and their vote is related to how they reflect on crime and what have you. So they'll vote somebody out or rubber stamp a no when there should be some consideration if that person's changing their heart, changing their attitudes, and how they have done all the programs necessary to be brought back into society.
I thank you for your comments. If we can try to limit these to questions rather than talking in a debate form, so if we can keep it as a question.
I have a question. If we approve this, and the Pardon and Parole Board is the sole determiner of who gets paroles, and a criminal is released and then does commit some horrendous act, there's no accountability for, is that true?
That's the real reason that we are opposing this. The governor needs to be part of the process because we can hold her accountable to this. And it's not just the governor that's doing this. I mean, she has a staff of lawyers and people, paralegals, that analyze all of these. And as one gentleman said, they turned them one down that the parole board recommended, and the other gentleman said they approved one that the parole board was for. So we feel like it's a soft on crime bill. In Oklahoma, I mean, we're first in a lot of things. We're the #1 pro-life, anti-abortion state in the whole United States. We've gotten awards for that. So even though we're keeping the governor in the process, we feel like that this is a good bill, and we both agree.
Well, we only agree on the vote. We don't agree on the reasons. And I would say that it's like, I think we put too many people in prison and we have too many laws in the books. That, again, is not the question.
I have one additional question.
If there's any other questions, we'll move on to the next state question. Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us then if it's right for the governor to stay in this process, how her office is going to readjust her schedule, or how they're going to accomplish allowing prisoners an opportunity to get out for nonviolent crimes, because she obviously doesn't have time if she's voting down almost 500 people that came before her. So how is she going to do this in a different manner if we vote this way?
Well, as I said, I am Vice Chairman of Public Safety, and I'm not trying to say that, you know, we're bragging about one party, but we've had one party that's controlled this state for almost 100 years. And it's been in that aspect that the governor has not really had, I guess, continuity with the legislature. I'm very involved with the corrections. Our committee oversees the corrections. And we're very involved, proactive, to address just exactly what you asked for. I actually went down and witnessed a execution and wanted to see that not only as a physician, but also as a legislator involved with that process. I can't speak specifically what she's going to do, but I know she has an open door to what the legislature wants her to do, and she is now looking at this. Originally, she was for the state question, and we went to her and told her, Governor, you don't need to be out of the process. All 100% of the district attorneys in the state are against this legislation. They feel like it is soft on crime. How we're going to fix it, I can't tell you the exact details, but it is definitely going to be improved with the process. You know, we incarcerate more women than any state in the whole United States. Now, what is the reason for that? My personal reason is that those are retribution crimes. The lady is being abused, beat up, whatever, and she gets even in the middle of the night and goes and shoots the guy or stabs the guy and so on and so forth. And we are working very closely with trying to get these type of women that have been convicted that maybe are retribution crimes of self-defense, but they're in prison, get them into halfway houses. And I have worked closely to visit all over the state, but especially in the Tulsa area, halfway houses where we're taking women and getting them out of prison. And the governor has been very supportive. I've only been in the legislature 4 years, but we have started doing that to help the women get back into society. There's many halfway houses all over the Tulsa area now for women. Some of them have to wear GPS monitors, but they go into this and they're very successful in getting them back into society, getting them educated, getting them a job, helping them get back connected with their families and get their lives back in order. Yes, Barbara?
How is the board selected? How is the party board selected?
They are appointed by the governor.
Well, some are appointed by the pro tem and the speaker.
The legislature, yeah.
How many are on the board?
10? 8 or 10?
How can we
I think there's alternates.
in the governor's office?
I'm sorry?
It's gone down in the governor's office. They get those requests and it just sits there for months and months and months.
I think the easiest way, and I have intervened in 4 years now with many, many cases, is go to your state rep or go to your state senator. And I have dogged them to make sure the process does not get bogged down. I have successfully, recently, it took me 2 years to get a couple, a husband and wife, and the only reason she went to prison is because he had used methamphetamine. He didn't have a lab or anything, but he used methamphetamine, but he kept a gun in his nightstand. And automatically, when you have a weapon involved in a crime, it's automatic sentence. You're gone for 15 years. We got him out about 5 years early, got her out. They're back productive in society. There was a question back here.
I disagree with the contention that we're one of the few states with a governor in the process. We're one of the few states that didn't vote for this communist instead of White House.
I have one.
Good reason to keep the governor.
Okay, well, we're going to keep it to questions, but I do appreciate it. Any other questions?
I have one comment, if I may, Dr. Ritz, thank you. On that one, the governor is running for re-election, and you need to make that a campaign issue. And you sound like you have enough support with people who can challenge her on it, and you need to make that an issue. And then you make sure that she understands that that's an issue. And let's see if the pen works a little faster.
Not to overstate it, but not only the governor has to come for re-election, but again, your state representative and your state senators have to come for re-election every 2 to 4 years. And to me, they're the ones that can change the system if you, I hate to use the term dog them, but you should constantly let them know about their circumstances. I've become someone that listens, and I get calls from all over the state, and we're not supposed to be the first response to someone in Beaver County. We try to let their state rep or state senator handle that. Rhonda.
Okay. Did this occur during other administrations, or is this just a Governor Fallon incident? No,
this will be keeping the Constitution as is, that the governor is part of the protocol.
Right, but was it a slow process during Governor Henry's term?
Like I said, we've had one party in power for 100 years. And again, I'm trying to keep this nonpartisan.
Right, no, I'm just asking this.
I've been in 4 years, and I can see a tremendous change. It's a slow process, but just for the women, which, I've been married 37 years and had 3 daughters, I know what women have to go through, and I delivered 2,000 babies, and I feel connected to women to the point that I see where a lot of women are being abused, and their crimes are more retribution crimes, why we're number 1 in the whole United States of incarcerated women. We've got to fix that. I've been on it, working with people, trying to help as much as we can.
I just didn't know if it was just something that started, or if it's been ongoing for a number of years.
Been there. Any other questions? Let's move on to 764. I think we're in order, aren't we, Amanda?
That's correct.
764 basically would amend the Oklahoma Constitution to allow Infrastructure Enhancement Reserve Fund, and I think this is tied for 762, or maybe even worse, because what this does on the surface says that it allows communities, and they're gearing it a lot for rural communities, to help improve their water and their sewage plants, and allowing them to let their own bonds, up to $300 million of bonds. Now, the danger of this, and I'm opposed to this, Amanda's opposed to this, the danger of this is there is no guarantee, and if you read the bill as we do, we try to look at these things inside out. We try to look as legislators who's running the bill to see what their ulterior motive is, but there is no guarantee that these bonds will be used for strictly sewage or water treatment plants. Let's give an example. And I'm not picking on Durant, but let's say Durant all of a sudden gets in trouble with their city government, and this is not water treatment related. They can go and borrow that money from the taxpayers of the bonds there and use that for another purpose. And that's why we are recommending that 764 be a no vote, because there is no guarantee that it will be used for what it states it is if you look at the intent of the language.
All right, thank you. 764, if you look on our handout, we have ballot language, and our reason for opposing this is that this is tied to House Bill 3055, the Water for 2060 Act, which was passed in this last legislative session. We were focused on healthcare reform and missed this bill, otherwise we would have had mass, to the best of our ability, opposition to oppose that. House Bill 3055 says the state of Oklahoma will commits the state to consuming no more fresh water in the year 2060 than is being consumed in the year 2012. This was a drought year. That's 48 years. That's 2 generations of people being committed to use no more fresh water, but the statewide, than we're using this year. Now, they're going to know that it's not going to rain ever again. We're not going to have water in the Arbuckle-Simpson Aquifer, and the Blue River is going to dry up, and all this other stuff. That is a big commitment. It should not have been made. This bill, if you pass this, is bonding, is to fund the infrastructure to make that happen. Now, the bills are marketed to people, saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and this and that and the other thing. And you have to look at what they're tied to and what they're associated with. This is a horrible piece of a question. We're recommending a no vote.
Don't go to the microphone, Charles.
If there's questions, come to the microphone on 764.
Does this bill allow non-elected officials to raise your property taxes without a vote of the people?
I believe it's open-ended, that any city or town or state government can do whatever they want with this $300 million, and that's why we're opposing it, because there's no accountability.
If you want to find out about your ad valorem taxes, talk to your county assessors, and Tulsa County has posted a bunch of very good PDFs explaining the whole process. And then you look at the role of the state board, the Board of Equalization, and the excise board. By the way, they're having a meeting tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock if you want to go there.
Amanda, please speak to the 13 unelected boards who will control the water.
Don White and I did a radio show on this bill, on this question over the summer when we found that it had passed. And we found that Oklahoma has the Oklahoma Water Resources Board, which was created by statute, I think. And they did a 5-year Oklahoma Comprehensive Water Plan. It took them 5 years, and they produced that. And they had, out of that report, which is quite beautiful and full-color publication, they had a recommendation, I think, of 9 different pieces of legislation, and 4 of them got through. House Bill 3055 was one of them, and the state question was the other. And in the back of that, when they're citing the sources of their findings, first off, they believe that climate change is anthropogenic, man-made global warming, and that justifies the science that's behind it. And then they also cover themselves by saying, well, whatever is actually causing it, we need to do something about it. Well, the sources of the experts are reports that they commissioned to have done, or reports that the Water Resources Board had written in the past. So they sourced themselves on a lot of that and then produced their report with their recommendation. They have a big problem with that. And as far as the 13, I don't know, I can't speak to that right now. But the idea is that the Water Resources Board sourced themselves. They're using bad science to make the decision. Plus, they're one of those, 500 authorities, boards, and commissions, and trusts, or agencies that are out there that are actually running things that we really don't know who they are, yet they're making decisions that govern our lives. So we don't think they should be given $300 million in bonding ability. Also, the infrastructure that they're wanting to build is to make this House Bill 3055 actually happen, and it's a bad idea.
Any question that you have on, like this item that this young lady asked, you can contact your state representative or your state senator, and they work for you, work for us as taxpayers, and they have access to a research staff that can research anything you want to know about any question there is. So if I'm your state rep, you shoot me an email, mike.ritz@okhouse.gov. It's on the Oklahoma House Representatives website, and we'll get you an answer. And we do answer, as Rhonda says, we do answer questions all the time. And I sometimes don't know, but I refer to them, and our House legal staff can get an answer pretty promptly. Any other questions on 764? We both agree to vote no on that. Okay, let's go on to 765. And 765 is a joint resolution, constitutional amendment to I'm trying to read the bill as well as the ballot issue. What it basically is addressing is the Department of Human Services. And I am opposed to this. I debated against this on the House floor. The reasons for that is it only removes the name of the Department of Human Services. It does not remove, as we're led to believe, the Department of Human Services. It also brings the governor into the process of appointing the director of the Department of Human Services. And even though the language says legislature will be involved, we looked up the law, and until today, Amanda was ambivalent about this, and I showed her the law that the governor appoints at the advice and consent of the Senate, so the House of Representatives, which I'm a member of, were taken out of the process. This makes a total power grab by the governor on this situation, and the governor already appoints the board. The board is already appointed by the governor. And it also breaks up the DHS into 4 different agencies, so it grows government big time. We have problems with DHS, but the problems are not from the employees or from the governor or the staff or whatever. We know the evil that dwells in the world that's going on around us. And so we're recommending, again, one of the top 3 to vote against 765.
Our whole board has met on this one, so our answer is still yes with reservations, and the reservations are, as Dr. Ritz has pointed out. We call this bill Frankenstein 1 or Frankenstein 2. Leave it as it is Frankenstein 1. Change it as Frankenstein 2. This came out in 1936. It was an amendment to the Oklahoma Constitution, and it came when Roosevelt was president, and we adopted the nanny state stuff, which is the Department of Public Welfare and this commission, etc. I heard Jason Nelson, Representative Nelson, on the radio this morning say that the objective of that was to make sure that they had the federal funding to do that. This whole thing is wrong to begin with. This is outside the normal bounds of the proper bounds of the enumerated powers of the state, but we made it into our Constitution. So it's still nanny state, but it puts nanny state under the authority of the legislature. It is true that the Senate, the governor makes the appointment of the director with the Senate approval. And as was pointed out today, that's normal mode of operation is that the Senate approves appointments by the governor. The bill that everybody ought to take a look at is that if State Question 765 passes, look at House Bill 3137, which Dr. Ritz, Jason Nelson mentioned and Dr. Ritz sent me today. And you'll see where the concerns are in here. It says the director shall publish an annual report, etc., but they're asking for a whole lot more statistical information. We said at the beginning that they're going to have a solution that's technology-based. The other thing that I don't like is that it changes who this director is responsible for reports. It is associated with, at the federal level, from the Social Security Administration to the Department of Health and Human Services, which is currently Kathleen Sebelius, we do not like. So, but she'll be replaced by somebody else that we don't like as well. So, you just make up your own mind on this one. It doesn't get rid of the institution, as Dr. Ritz pointed out. It does change some accountability, removes it from the Constitution, puts it under statutory authority. You have some measure of oversight if you would like to track all the bills, but the governor and the Senate appoint the director.
Questions about 765? Yes, ma'am.
Would passage of this bill in any way make the work of the Human Services Department more efficient or less costly?
Well, you know, no to answer you broadly or simply, but broadly, anytime the legislature tries to tweak something, it messes it up even further. And this is look what happened to the medical examiner's office. I mean, the problem with the medical examiner's office was we had 2 bad medical examiners back to back, and the board wasn't really stepping up to do that. They have done that, and we have allowed to back off and let them try to get it straightened out. And if you have a problem, again, with an agency, you call your elected official. I know who to call. I had a perfect example on Labor Day weekend. I get a call from a gentleman, his wife had died of cancer, and on like Tuesday or Wednesday, and he couldn't get the cremation permit, and he calls me on a Saturday, and he said, you know, we're trying to get this taken care of so we can have the ceremony and get the, you know, cremation and people coming in and out. And Hayhurst Funeral Home couldn't get anything done, and within I would say 15 minutes. I had the chief of the medical examiner's office, the chief of the office director on there, and we had them their cremation permit taken care of on a Saturday on Labor Day weekend. So if you really are not getting results from your elected official, that's who you need to talk to. Whether this will help DHS, I've helped numerous cases of DHS get resolved. People have been working on for a long time. And the system starts at your elected official to keep the DHS accountable. Now you're adding another layer of bureaucracy, and you're taking me, as a member of the House, out of it by voting for this. So you need to vote against it. Okay, the last one. Any other comments or questions? Primarily questions about 765. 766 basically is a constitutional amendment to, get my notes straight here, to allow personal property and tangible personal property items to be removed from the taxes. And it's defined in the ballot. You can read it as well as I do what the definition of intangible personal property is. Licenses, franchises, contracts, land leases, mineral interests, customs, computers, software. I am encouraging people to vote for this because what 766 with intangible licenses is, it's kind of blue sky out there that's being taxed. And any time that I can get rid of a bad tax, like we talked about with the property tax in 758, I'm going to be at the front of the line. Now, if we want to put a heavy tax on abortion or a heavy tax on liquor or a heavy tax on tobacco, I'm for that tax. But something like this, we have another opportunity. It's been pointed out that the Chamber of Commerce is lobbying very heavily. Well, they do get some things right. 90% of the time I don't agree with them, but they are right on this because a lot of the big corporations and the oil companies are being heavily taxed on intangible property. And we feel like that this will keep this from being passed along to us, the consumers. I mean, if you look at your cell phone bill or your regular phone bill, there's probably, 20 to 25% taxes on there. And it just drives me crazy to look at all of those superfluous taxes. So we are supporting 766. I'll turn it over to Amanda.
All right, I'm going to read scripture to you. It says, render to all what is due them, tax to whom tax, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, and honor to whom honor. So we're not going to get out of paying our taxes. And that's Romans 13:7. And Romans 13:9 says, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So keep those scriptures in mind as we go through the tax questions, which are not tax cuts, they're tax shifts. So it's a tax cut for somebody on the one part is a tax increase for somebody else because this state didn't reduce spending. And your county hasn't reduced spending necessarily, and you voted yes for school bond issues. So what gets cut someplace because they didn't come in and lower the tax expenditures, the millage rate's going to go up or somebody's going to be apportioned a higher tax, and I'm afraid it's going to be the people at the low end of the economic scale. We're not for ad valorem taxes, and I saw that our assessor showed up here, so I'll say this in public right now. I don't think there should be ad valorem taxes, and I don't think there should be taxes. A failure to pay your property tax should not result in confiscation of your property, because private property, ownership, and freedom are inseparable. That was George Washington who said that. But that's not the question. I learned a lot as OK Safe examined these state questions. The ad valorem ones were the trickiest because we had to wade into an area that was not our normal place. We understand surveillance systems and technology. Ad valorem tax is a brand new subject. That caused us to look at it with completely fresh, naive eyes to understand, number one, how is it calculated and who calculates it. State question 766 was a contentious one, and it came about as a result of the 2009 Southwestern Bell versus the Oklahoma State Board of Equalization court decision, where the court decided that affirmed the lower court saying, yes, Southwestern Bell, you cannot exempt your laundry list of things. The state constitution already exempts intangible personal property. It's already exempt. Southwestern Bell didn't like that list. It's a list of about 8 different categories of items. We're all exempt, right? What Southwestern Bell wanted was a long list of additional intangibles, and the excise State Board of Equalization denied it, and then it went to the Court of Tax Review, and they affirmed the State Equalization Board. Then it went to the Oklahoma Supreme Court. The Oklahoma Supreme Court said, yeah, what the Court of Tax Review said is right. The Constitution allows this much. You want to exempt this much? You can't do that. So since 2009, AT&T, who was Southwestern Bell, AT&T has been paying thousands of dollars to lobbyists to get our Constitution changed. Should it be changed? Probably. In our educational process, we learned that there are ad valorem taxes are assessed by 2 different entities. One is that which is locally assessed. Your small businesses are locally assessed by the assessor's office. All right? The county assessors is the one who does your property tax, the assessment on your house, your businesses, etc. Then there's this entity called the State Board of Equalization, and those corporate public service corporations are centrally assessed. The state assesses them. What's a public service corporation? They're the utilities. Those are the large corporations that have a presence here and in other states that provide, typically are the airlines, the telecommunications companies, the railroads, the oil and gas pipelines, etc. If you go to the Oklahoma Tax Commission website and look on reports, you can see a list of all the entities that are centrally assessed by the State Board of Equalization. That's who will primarily benefit from State Question 766, because their ad valorem tax will go down. And I won't get into the unit method of valuation because that's a little bit complicated, although I do understand it better now. So they're going to get a bigger exemption. Why? Because they own more of those intangible properties. What is intangible? It's a whole lot longer list than what's here. And there's the other problem. Intangible is subjective in its definition. There's no one definition of what's intangible. So what's intangible for one company could be non-intangible for another, or for you. The county assessors have an organization, and they were part of a 21-member committee that was working with the legislature to come up with this language all through 2012, the last session. Those people were trying to tell the legislators to say they need to separate this question into 2 parts and have 2 separate questions. One for those entities that are locally assessed so that we can stop the impact on those small businesses so we're not going to be taxing them. By the way, there's no new tax. And then have the centrally assessed, the large corporations, as a separate question. Well, according to one assessor who was there during that last week, AT&T had paid a bunch of lobbyists to come in there, and they hammered the author of the bill and said, listen, we got to have those 2 questions together so that it won't look like an AT&T tax credit. So it's together. So those, both which are centrally assessed and locally assessed and centrally assessed, are bundled together. Now, should there be an exemption for this? Yeah, there probably should be an exemption. What they don't know is what the financial impact will be if AT&T now gets to, and other corporations, the telecommunications company, now get to exempt almost 50% of their wealth from ad valorem taxes. So what your county can, if they have the presence of that corporation is present in your county, what you can now collect from them has gone down. So guess where your assessor is going to have to get the money? Because we didn't reduce spending. Remember the formula that the assessor's office has provided for us. When the value goes down, the millage rate goes up to get the taxes. So there's where our concern is. Because the state did not reduce spending, we're going to give a tax credit, big dollars, for some companies. Now, some of these corporations, we're not anti-business, by the way. We're anti-shifting the burden to somebody else. But what we're The corporations are telling the law, saying, oh, this is going to be about 10% of our assets are going to be intangible. I talked to Mike Isbell with the Oklahoma Tax Commission, and he says when they come to him with their value, they render their own intangibles. They tell them, the corporation says what our intangibles are worth. They're claiming 50 to 75% of their worth is intangibles. That's what they're wishing for. So we don't know what the financial impact to the state is going to be. Yes, ma'am.
So what you're saying is there's no guarantee that should these large corporations receive this tax benefit, that tax break or that tax savings to them will be passed to us, correct?
There's no guarantee. Now, not every county is going to be impacted, because it's pointed out, not every county has an airline presence, not every county has a railroad in it, not every county has an oil and gas line or a telecommunications company. The centrally assessed only pays ad valorem taxes in the counties if they have a presence. Is that right? Do you mind if...
Come to the microphone. The best assessor in the state of Oklahoma.
Can I not ask a question but explain this?
Briefly, if that's in your vocabulary.
My office created this little equation, and please look at it. I want to clarify some terminology that's easy to get into, and it took me a while to figure this out as assessor. There are no taxes created or determined by the centrally assessed. All it is a valuation. All they're doing is determining the value of something, and then they come back to the county to say, well, you got this much value in your county or not. So if we decrease what they determine as value in Oklahoma City, coming back to this county is less value. The amount of taxes is determined by your excise board. By the way, I'll reiterate, there's a meeting tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. The excise board, all ad valorem taxes are local, have nothing to do with the state. They're determined down here in the county. So if they say X amount of dollars tomorrow, year before it was $608 million. Last year it was $626 million, and if they approve $635 million tomorrow, that's the amount of taxes that have to be raised. Now, if I have less centrally assessed value, the rate's got to go up. Who gets that rate? Everybody. Senior citizens, everybody in the county has a higher rate because we'll have technically less value to pay for the X dollars. So please view, I'm sorry, Dr. Ritz, you're one of my favorite people. Please view the cap laws the same way as you do this. Anything that changes value shifts the tax burden to those less able to pay. Senior citizens have a zero cap. They can freeze their taxable value. Every neighborhood that doesn't go up 3 or 4% is going to have shifted to them a higher rate, so they pay more of their fair share. Fat cat like me, hasn't happened recently, but 1 year my house went up, my neighborhood went up 14%. Why in the hell would, why in the heck, he's a Marine. Why in the heck would you, and I grew up on a circus before that, I've had a lot of handicaps. Why would you limit me paying my fair share at 14%, or the corporation that's growing at 12%, and shift the ability to pay that money down to the zero cap senior citizens, or the areas that aren't growing 14% or 3%? That's what happens in these cap laws. We're turning into California. We got to, everybody decide to be fair with each other, and by golly, let's stop spending. And you stop the spending by being at excise board tomorrow morning.
Thank you, Mr. Jason. And I think, and I know he's very passionate about this, but I do want to let you know this was not taken lightly when we debated and when this bill went through the process. And probably some of the top conservatives in the legislature sponsored this. I didn't sponsor it, but Representative Jason Murphy, who is 100% conservative index and probably one of the most detailed people in the legislature. But let me just ask you on this particular bill, as we've talked about, we beat up on AT&T, And Amanda pulled the Bible card. I'll remind you about what Goliath and that little shepherd boy named David went through in 1 Samuel 17 down to 1747 when David was getting dressed for battle. God said in verse 47, he said, "The battle is mine, saith the Lord." So we do have a lot of responsibilities, but we also have an almighty God to advise us. And none of these decisions are taken lightly without on our knees in many cases, prayerfully. But I want to just ask anybody in the audience, does anybody have any royalties, mineral rights here? I certainly do. Okay, that will lower your taxes because that's intangible. Mineral rights. Does anybody have any insurance policies here? Most of us do. That will lower your intangible insurance policy taxes. So it's not just intangible for AT&T and Southwestern Bell. You look at the list here, they put it in the ballot, probably did a good job explaining it. And anytime, I'll repeat it, anytime that I can lower a bad tax, I'll be front line. And that is one thing we're able to do, is a bad tax. Yes, it potentially can shift it, but then it all goes back to us, doesn't it? If we want to vote those bond issues and keep voting those taxes up and those millages up for, again, the highest taxed county in the state, the third highest taxed in the nation, and Broken Arrow, 1 or 2 with Jinx in the whole state, then keep voting those bond issues. But we can also plug that hole when necessary. New question here?
AT&T is going to pass the tax right on us anyway. I mean, whatever they get back, they don't pay this tax anyway.
Well, that's part of the formula. Yes, ma'am.
Kind of interesting, Amanda, you said that the AT&T kind of determines what is defined as an intangible, and though us, private citizens who have insurance policies and whatever may also benefit from lower taxes, we cannot determine by ourselves what are intangibles that we own.
The tax commission, when I asked them, I said, if this passes, but by the way, if it fails, you're not going to get taxed on intangibles if you've got a business because they're passed Senate Bill 1436, which continues the business activity tax, which is the in lieu of tax. So that continues. It's a $25 fee, so some filing costs associated with that for businesses in lieu of an intangible tax. So they've got a stopgap for protection in case this question fails. I had to learn what this means of rendering their property. The corporation themselves has an obligation to pay their taxes, and they have to say what their worth is. The centrally assessed, the State Board of Equalization says, okay, what's your value? They render a list of what their value is, and then from that list, or their unit value, then the intangibles are taken as an exemption. That's where they want this longer list. Well, they get to render that. They get to render that list of what their intangibles are. I'm going to read a quote to you. This is on our website, by the way, which is ok-safe.com. It says, the value of intangible assets, this is a white paper on the growing trend toward investment in intangibles in the American economy. It says the intellectual property is in there, by the way. It says the value of intangible assets, which includes intellectual capital plus economic competencies in the U.S. economy, totals an estimated $14.5 trillion. And it's concentrated in 24 industries, and of those 24 industries, 10 of them are the primary holders of intangibles. And in that 10 is the telecommunications company. So we're seeing, because we're moving from an industrialized, tangible, real property kind of production economy to this knowledge-based service industry. So the wealth is shifting in larger corporations into this category called intangibles, leaving the rest of us to actually pay the ad valorem, while they're moving their wealth over into this category. So we can't stop globalization, but just be aware there's this trend is to make this category of unlimited items this category called intangibles, exempt from paying ad valorem taxes. That's going to leave us, because nobody's stopping spending, somebody else is going to be footing the bill. And again, we're not for all these taxes, by the way.
So, any other questions?
Does this make us more business friendly, enable us to attract other businesses to come to the state and bring their taxable annual assets with them?
If I understand your question, if we vote for this, does this make it more business friendly? I think it does, because again, as it said, your corporations, and I don't have any corporations now, but I've owned 6 corporations, and the reason I got out of them is because there's so many taxes and so many hoops to jump through. And Oklahoma is trying to attract, we're called the flyover zone of the United States, where everybody flies over but nobody stops to live here. I think it does, and that's the intent of the legislation. And to defend what we really need to do, again, go back to your legislature and work with them. And if there is a loophole here that AT&T is getting, let's close it. We're trying to, I don't know if you all know what tax credits are, but I want to give you a quick synopsis of tax credits. Under the previous administration, years ago, back in maybe 40 years ago, if you were a company that wanted to start a business here, you could go to the state of Oklahoma and put up $1 and the state would give you $3. And there's a little bitty fine print that says that you don't even have to establish that business in Oklahoma, tax credits. And you don't even have to pay taxes in Oklahoma. And one of my colleagues, Representative Reynolds from Oklahoma City, he's a math major, he's a numbers cruncher, and he's been working on this for 7 or 8 years, and finally we're now starting to look at these tax credits because the state auditor believes we've got maybe upwards of $100, maybe $200 billion of tax credits out there. That's your tax money that people are making money off of to go put a business in Texas and not paying taxes in Oklahoma. So we're trying to close loopholes. We're getting the message. We need to wind this down. So any other comments? 766.
Does anybody have any other questions on the state questions? Assessor Yazel said that there was a statement that was misstated, and he'll be happy. I know I've got to move everybody, but I said 6:30 to 8. Okay, because we've still got the judges and Vision 2.
I love the doctor like a brother, but listen to me. All taxes, this amount right here, is determined at the county, not by the state. All we're doing is determine a value over there. And when that value comes to this county, then we decide how much taxes to pay. It doesn't chase anybody out of our state. The taxes aren't determined over in Oklahoma City for property taxes. It's only locally. So if we come back with less value, they're just going to have a higher rate and pay the same fair share.
Thank you. So basically, I'm for it. Amanda, the assessor's against it. So we'll leave it at that. I think we'll move on to the judges real quickly.
We need to, because we've only got a few minutes, and I want to be conscious
I'll
of
make the
everyone's
judges
time.
really simple, and you've got my handout. I asked some very strong Christian judges that I trust. I'm sorry. He moved me over to the side there. Is that better? There were I asked some Christian judges, who do we need to retain and who do we need to fire? And of all the judges on there, there's only 2 strong pro-life judges, Judge Lewis and Judge Brutner, that adhere to their constitutional oath. The rest of them, I'm recommending voting against. So yes for Lewis and yes for Brutner. Very simple, and now I'm done. Thank you.
They did a great job. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. On the judges, you had a question on the judges. He said there's 2 judges that he's saying to retain. What judges were those?
Lewis and Brutner. They're on our sheet there.
If you look at Dr. Ritz's recommendations on this is his recommendation sheet, so that way you've got it. Does everybody have a clearer vision now of the state questions, or are you more confused? So that's why we provided you with your own cheat sheet, so go ahead and feel free to fill it out the way that you want to. I'm going to get very quickly into Vision 2. I'm sure that you've heard a bunch of stuff that's going on as far as the county wanting to pass Vision 2, which is nearly a $750 million tax. It's not an increase in your tax, and they'll tell you that, but what they're doing is they're asking to extend Vision 2025, which is not set to expire until 2017. They're asking for an extension until 2029. Now, how many of us are going to be around in 2029? And if we had a baby today, the baby would be driving in 2029. I think what they've got is two propositions. Your proposition one has to do with the infrastructure at the airport, and it has to do with the closing fund to bring businesses into the Tulsa area. They're looking for money for buildings and infrastructure to maintain, repair, and upgrade the facilities out at American Airlines, IC Bus, and Spirit Aerosystems. They're also looking to build a test cell, and provide tools and training to the airlines, in addition to the infrastructure changes, and those two are capped. Those two, and I'm trying to be fair and tell you what they're proposing, and then why we're opposed to it. And then the closing fund for businesses, they put it at $53 million, but that's based on our sales tax projections from this year, or the past 12 months. And so it could actually exceed, because there's no cap on that, it could actually exceed $150, almost $200 million during the life of this tax. So we stand opposed to Proposition 1 because we feel that, number one, it's too soon, that these taxes that we need to wait until it's closer, until 2017, when we can better determine what our needs are and not necessarily what our wants are. We believe that it's too rushed, that this was brought to the public on August the 8th. It was voted for on August 13th by our commissioners to be put on the ballot on November the 6th. There was no public discourse. There was no discussion. It was that fast, and they used the excuse that if we don't do it, then American Airlines is going to leave Tulsa, and that's not true. It doesn't matter what we do, whether we make those upgrades or we don't make those upgrades. American Airlines is in bankruptcy. They're going to make their own decisions, and it has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not we make those changes. Now, also, they pay a way below market value on rent out in those facilities. IC Bus pays $1 a year. I believe that Spirit pays about $42,000, and I think American might pay a little bit more than that. However, when you consider the amount of space that they've got, it's written into their contracts also that they are responsible for any repairs, maintenance, and upgrades. So why would they come to the citizens of Tulsa and ask us to once again bail out American Airlines? And so we stand opposed to that for those reasons. Proposition 2 in the Vision 2 process actually goes for what they call quality of life improvements. Now what they did is they came up with dollar amounts based on 2010 census, and or the population during 2010, and based on sales tax revenues of 2011. So what they're doing is they're going to, our dollars are going to be set here in Broken Arrow. Now Tulsa's population declines. Broken Arrow's increases. So even though it's based on 2010, we're going to have more people in Broken Arrow, but yet the amount of money that we're going to receive is based on on the 2010 census. So we're not going to, it's not going to be proportionate in the way that we do things. If you look here, Michael Bates has offered an alternative, and there are other alternatives, not just him. If you go to Tulsa Now, they've also offered alternatives, and it's where the cities try and pass this tax themselves. They're able to keep the money themselves. There's no bonding fees or costs. You do a pay-as-you-go. You can determine the amount of time that you want it, and you can spend it on whatever we want to. If we want to spend it on roads and maintenance, we can do that. If we want to build a football stadium, we can do that as well. But it's what we determine. What they did is they took dollar amounts and then they said, okay, now tell us what you want to do with it. Now, last Friday I went to the bank and I told my banker, I said, Matt, I'd like to borrow $1 million. And he kind of looked at me and said, okay, Rhonda, what are you going to do with that $1 million? And I said, well, you know, I'm not really sure, but when I'm done, it's going to be awesome, and I'm probably going to have to come back for more money to get it finished. And he was just like, yeah, you're not getting that money, Rhonda. And that's what they've done with this. It's like, and I used the scenario on the back of this page where the guy on a Saturday morning hollers out to his wife and says, honey, I'm going to run down to Home Depot in just a little while. She says, well, that's okay, sweetheart. What are you going to get? And he says, well, you know, I don't know. I'll just figure it out when I get there. Now, I don't know about you, but as a woman, that to me is dangerous. Because when I go shopping and I don't know what I'm shopping for, I spend way more than what I should. And that's the way that we feel that this is going to happen. None of the projects that they're proposing to spend money on is going to take it from beginning to end. None of those are going to even be completed. So what does that tell you? They're going to come back for more money. I'm asking you to give serious consideration to this and to consider a no vote on this because it's not the right time. It's too much. It's too much money. It's too soon. It's too rushed. It's way too sloppy. And it's way too vague. And I think that Tulsa and Tulsa County, and I think that Broken Arrow can do better. Yes, Peggy?
Please speak to the Title 60 trust.
It also will establish another trust, which you've heard about, which is going to be made up of the 3 county commissioners, the Tulsa mayor, and 3 mayors from the outlying areas. So Broken Arrow may or may not have a voice in what goes on, or Skiatook may or may not have a voice in what happens. But the way that they have set this up, and thanks to Amanda requesting a freedom of information, or what did you call it? Open records request. In their actual minutes, it states that they want to be able to hold these meetings behind closed doors in a way that they come out and they make the decisions, and you will not be able to request an open records report on how they came about with the projects that they did, and so you just have to accept what they've done. I think the timing is wrong. I think that we can do better, and I would actually, if it doesn't feel good in your gut, then I would ask that you vote no on Vision 2. Does anybody have any questions about Vision 2? Larry?
Quick question. Maybe Mr. Hazel knows to answer it, but just for a talking point against it, I've already kind of used this. I'm not sure I'm right about things. I'm afraid that maybe some people, especially over in Tulsa, that are maybe planning to vote for it, maybe for the main reason that they just want to finally see the second low water dam in Lake Delta on the Arkansas River. There's just a lot of people who just want to see something finally done with the river. And is it correct that the Vision 2025, before it expires in 2017, that tax will raise an excess of $100 to $125 million surplus by the time it's expired, and that money's not been allocated to anything? And wouldn't that be more than enough to build that low water dam in the Arkansas River?
Was the lake going to cost like $79 million or
They've dedicated $71 million.
If you go to my banker, they won't even talk to you about a loan on phase 2 without an accounting in phase 1. And phase 1 is 2025. They're all over the map. You know, they call me Crazy Ken because I projected anywhere from $40 to $90 million surplus the first phase, 2025. One of the commissioners got on the radio and admitted $40 to $80 million. My calculation is it's going to be over $100 million. But nobody has an accounting for it. And we got to collect it for 4 more years, 4.5 more years. Why in the heck would we be out there determining a new loan without even settling up the first one? And oh, by the way, who wants to buy a bond that doesn't even start collecting money until way out there? So where are they going to get the reserve for the bond? Where are they going to get the interest payment? It's over here in the first phase, unused money or something, indirectly, money's fungible. I say demand an accounting for the first thing, pay as you go for 3 or 4 more years, pay cash. Now that offends politicians and attorneys who like issuing costs, interest, BOK, whoever. It offends them to pay cash. But that's what we should be doing as taxpayers. Make them account for phase 1, then we'll talk about something else.
Agreed.
Take a look at that piece of crap down on Main Street that they stuck down there that doesn't fit this city's nomenclature or area at all. That's what you'll get a lot more of if you pass this bill. You want to tell them what you want, when you want it, and where you want it. They work for you, but you will have to tell a lot of them that because they don't know it.
In regard to the river, we don't even know if there can be more water dams that can be built. The Corps of Engineers study is still 2 years out, and there's an endangered migratory bird that resides in the river because of the sand dunes, and the EPA may not allow it. So it's kind of putting the cart before the horse, and we are. I am part of the Citizens for a Better Vision. We are a grassroots organization. We're up against a lot of money. You guys have heard all of the you've seen the commercials, you've heard them on the radio. I'm sure you've received numerous beautiful flyers telling you how wonderful this is in your mailbox. And so, we're just asking that if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Now, we're going to be on Saturday. There's a rally at LaFortune Park with OK for Tea, and it's called Save the Rally Republic, and we'll be there, and I'll be one of the speakers there. And then on Sunday, there's also a forum at the Temple Israel, where J.D. Alexander will be the opposing voice, and Karen Keith, Commissioner Keith, will be the proponent for Vision2. That starts at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning. Pastor, I apologize if anybody misses church. The more people that we can get there, the better off. The more questions you can ask, the better we're gonna be. We do have signs and buttons and stuff in the back. I would ask that you, if you're in opposition, if you would show your opposition. Larry? Oh, yeah, Larry is going to have a sign wave on Saturday at 3 o'clock also. Go ahead.
That's it. For those who are opposed to Vision2, it's the second opportunity Saturday following the big Save the Republic rally from 3 to 5 p.m. If you probably will already have signs made over the Fortune Park. Just come on over to 71st Domingo at the southwest corner of 71st Domingo from 3 to 5. We'll stand and come take our opposition demonstration to the street with a sign made. Thank you.
Okay, last but not least, our, what you got, TC, did I forget anything? Oh, money. Well, if you want to make a donation to our cause, you can in the back. But I did want to make sure that everybody knows that we vote on November the 6th in the back so that we can all read it. Check and make sure that your polling place has not changed. Mine changed twice this year. So it went from one place to another, and I guess that one didn't work out so good, so they put us back at the original place. So make sure that you check back there, make sure that your polling place is, you know where it is, so that you don't have any issues and it's not frustrating on November the 6th. And remember, you have to have a voter ID, either your voter registration card or a photo ID to be able to vote. Early voting, it starts Friday, 8 to 5 on Friday, Monday, and Monday, 8 to 1 on Saturday. You go down to the election board down on Denver, just past David O. Moss. So, does anybody have any questions? Yes, Peggy?
One comment, if you're using your driver's license, look at it before the Tuesday and make sure it's still current.
Peggy works the polls, so she knows what's accepted and what's not, and I know that there's going to be a lot that's going to, they're going to be very, very stringent on the rules. So if you would make sure that your driver's license is current, if that's what you're going to use as your form of ID, and a Sam's card will not work. So without further ado, I guess, yes ma'am. My last name is Villamont Smith, Villemont-Smith, and that's Rhonda with no H. We're going to make it as difficult as we can. So I want to thank you guys for coming out, taking time. If you have any questions, Representative Ritz and Amanda are here. Ken Nazel is here to answer any questions that you have about assessors and how your taxes are assessed. So feel free to pepper them with questions, because that's what they're here for. Thank you so much.